So today we're going over 1.5 part 2. We're going to start by square roots of negative numbers. They want us to simplify this. Now for number 1, note that 25 and 36 are both perfect squares. But the fact that they have a negative is where the I comes in. Remember, the square root of negative 1 is equal to 1. So anytime you see a negative 1 in there, so negative 1 times 25, you can break it up into that if you see it. You can do, well, this is negative 1 times 25 in there, and this is negative 1 times 36 in there. Now, because that's the case, well, 25, obviously, we know it's a perfect square, so it's going to be 5. And because we have the negative I in there, or the negative 1 under the square root, it'll become 5i. And so will the 36. You would take out the I, and that will become a positive 36. So we would do 6i for the simplification of this problem. And then you can combine the 5i and the 6i to get 11i. And then that would be your final answer for this problem. For 2, I'm going to write up here to have a little bit more space. So 2 is negative 27 minus 3, negative 48 plus 12. So I'm going to start by taking out the i's. All of them are, the I can go out. So I, 27, minus 3i, 48, plus root 12. Now, when I do that, I am going to simplify as much as I can. I can break this into 3 and 9, 3 and 3, because we have the pair. This will become 3i, root 3, minus 3i. Let's figure out 48. So I can do 2 and 24, 2 and 12, 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So I have 2 times 2, so I would get here times 4, root 3, plus, let's do the 12. It's going to be 2 and 6, 2 and 3. So again, 2 root 3. So this is going to simplify to 3i, root 3, minus 12i, root 3, plus 2 root 3. Now you can only combine these two because they're the ones that have the I. The 2 root 3 from the 12 is, you can't really combine it. So you would end up with negative 9i root 3 plus 2 root 3. Now you can leave your answer like this. This is completely fine. You could write it as 2 root 3 minus 9i root 3. This is also completely fine. You can even write it as 2 minus 9i, in parentheses, root 3. Either of those ways for the final answer would be considered correct. So here's number 3, negative root 50 plus 6 negative root 45 minus 3 negative root 75. I will start by, again, taking out the i's so I can work with them as positive. So I, 50 plus 6i root 45 minus 3i root 75. Now I can go ahead and simplify as much as I can. I can do, well, 5 and 10. I can do 5 and 2, so I can get the 5s out. This will be, let's do 5 and 9, 3 and 3. We have the 3s that come out. Here I can do 5 and 15, 5 and 3, so the 5s is what comes out. So here I have 5i root 2 plus 6i times 3 root 5 minus 3i times 5 root 3, which will simplify to 5i root 2 plus 18i root 5 minus 15i root 3. And actually, that would be your final answer. You cannot combine any of these because even though they all have i's, they all have different stuff under the square root. You would be able to combine them if the roots were the same, but we have root 2, root 5, and root 3, so none of these can be combined. That will be your final answer. So we're going to talk about arithmetic operations on complex numbers. So we use this property to divide complex numbers. So dividing complex numbers to simplify the quotient a plus bi over c plus di, multiply the numerator and the denominator by the complex conjugate of the denominator. So what does that mean? If you guys look here, they just rewrote this right here. What is the conjugate? The conjugate is the denominator with a negative sign in the middle. So notice how all it did was change from c plus di to c minus di. And when you do that, you will FOIL the top, and then when you FOIL the bottom, you actually get rid of the imaginary numbers. We'd rather not have imaginary numbers, but in the case that we do, we get rid of them by multiplying by the conjugate, which is just changing that positive di to negative di. If it's a standard form, that will always be the case. So it's important to put it in standard form in order for you to be able to get the conjugate. And then again, after you FOIL it, you'll get the stuff on the right, which is AC plus BD plus BC minus AD, and then the I. And then you're going to get the C squared plus D squared in the denominator. That's after you FOIL it. Alright, so they want us to divide these complex numbers and express the answer in the form A plus BI. Now I'm going to rewrite them. I'm going to do A right here, and then I'll do B right next to it. Now let's find the conjugate. The conjugate of this is going to be 1 plus 2i and 1 plus 2i. Now I will go ahead and FOIL. So I'm going to FOIL the top. So it's going to be 3 plus 6i plus 5i plus 10i squared. And I'm going to FOIL the bottom. It's going to become 1 plus 2i minus 2i minus 2i squared. Now notice how the positive 2i and the minus 2i will cancel. I'm going to combine what I can in the top and change everything that's with a I squared 2 times a negative 1. So I'm going to go ahead and simplify as much as I can. So I get 3 plus 11i. And then it's going to be plus 10 times negative 1. And then it's going to be 1 minus 2 times negative 1. That's going to simplify to 3 plus 11i minus 10 over 1 plus 2. So I'm going to get negative 7 plus 11i over 3. And that will be your final answer. We put it in the form a plus bi. It just happens that we have a denominator to it. But it is in the correct form, which is standard a plus bi. I'll go ahead and start writing b next to it. So b is 7 plus 3i over 4i. Thank you. I realized I made a mistake when I FOILed, guys. That should have been a 4, not a 2. So this is going to be 4i squared, so it becomes 4 times negative 1. So it's going to be 4 plus 1, which is 5. Sorry about that. For B, we might not have a visible conjugate, but we do have it. Keep in mind we have a plus 0, which is the non-real number. So the conjugate for 4i is going to be the negative 4i. Remember, it's 0 plus 4i. It's going to be 0 minus 4i. So I'm just going to go ahead and multiply by negative 4i. So that's going to actually cancel this out. So when I distribute the negative 4i, we will get negative 28i minus 12i squared. And then on the bottom, I will get negative 16i squared. I'm going to simplify as much as I can first. So it's going to be negative 28i minus 12 times negative 1 over negative 16 times negative 1. So this will become negative 28i plus 12 over 16. And again, they're asking it to express in the form a plus bi, so I would rearrange it to 12 minus 28i over 16. You can actually simplify this by 4. All of these numbers are divisible by 4. So this will become 3, this will become 7, and this will become 4. So your true final answer after simplifying is going to be 3 minus 7i over 4. So they want us to simplify this again. Let's do it all in the form of a plus bi. For this one, you can either take the 4i to be the negative or the 5. I'm going to use the 5 to make my life easier. And the conjugate, then it would be negative 4i. So then I can go ahead and say, well, this top one is going to be 20i. The bottom is going to be negative 16i squared. So this becomes 20i, negative 16 times negative 1. So that is 20i over 16. And again, this is all divisible by 4. So this becomes 5, this becomes 4. And our final answer is 5i over 4. So the first thing I'm going to check is the denominator in standard form. Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply by 5 minus 8i on both sides. I mean on the top and the bottom. And then in the case of the numerator, I'm just going to distribute that 9. And in the case of the denominator, I am going to FOIL it. So this is going to become 45 minus 72i. And when I FOIL, it would be 25 minus 40i plus 40i minus 64i squared. So it's going to cancel them in between. So it's going to be 45 minus 72i over 25 minus 64. The I squared is just going to become negative 1. So I'm going to be left with 45 minus 72i. So 25 plus 64. That's going to become, I'm going to go up here, 45 minus 72i over 25 plus 64 is 89. You cannot simplify that anymore, so this would be your final answer. So again, the denominator is already in standard form, so it's going to be 2 minus i. 2 minus i. So I'm going to FOIL both the top and the bottom. So it's going to become negative 14 plus 7i minus 12i plus 6i squared. And the bottom is going to be negative 4 plus 2i. Oh, wait, hold on. I made a mistake. I forgot to put the negative in front of the 2. That changes everything as it won't simplify. So make sure to keep the negative 2 when the real number is negative. I'm sorry about that. So I'm going to get 14 plus 7i plus 12i plus 6i squared. And then over, it's going to be positive 4 plus 2i minus 2i minus I squared. So this is going to cancel in the inside. I can combine this on the top as 14 plus, then this becomes plus 6 times negative 1. Then the bottom is 4 minus negative 1. So it's going to become 14 plus 19i minus 6 over 4 plus 1, which simplifies to 8 plus 19i over 5. All right, for 42, it's going to be 5 plus 10i on both of these. So I'm going to distribute that 4 to get 20 plus 40i, and I'm going to distribute the bottom. I will get 25 plus 50i minus 50i minus 100i squared. These cancel out. So it's going to become 20 plus 40i over 25 minus 100. And I'm just substituting the I squared to a negative 1. So that's going to give me 20 plus 40i over 25 plus 100. It's going to give me 20 plus 40i over 125. These are all divisible by 5, so I'm going to get that 20 divided by 5 is 4, 40 divided by 5 is 8, and 125 divided by 5 is 25. So I'm left with 4 plus 8i over 25 as the final answer. Now for 43, last but not least, we're going to do the same thing, 5 plus 10i. And I'm going to distribute, FOIL the top, so it's going to be 50 plus 100i minus 5i minus 10i squared. All of that over 25 plus 50i minus 50i minus 100i squared. These cancel. I'm going to combine what I can, and wherever there's an I squared, I will put in a negative 1. So it's going to be 50 plus 95i minus 10 times negative 1 over 25 minus 100 times negative 1. That's going to become 50 plus 95i plus 10 over 25 plus 100. That's going to give me 60 plus 95i over 125. And again, they all simplify by 5. This is going to become 12. This is going to become 19. And this is going to become 25. My final answer, it's going to be 12 plus 19i over 25. Well, as you guys know, this is it for today's notes. This is the last problem. You guys do have homework on Canvas and WebAssign. Just make sure you guys complete it by Monday when we're done with part 3.